And welcome, folks, to the talk show, Let the Truth Be Told. I'm your host, Pastor David. And, folks, we got a great show today. We're going to talk about the president and his business overseas with the Saudis. We're also going to do a recap on Brandon Johnson. He's gotten himself into some kind of trouble. So if you ain't got nothing to do, call your friends and let them know you're listening to Let the Truth Be Told Radio. I'm your host, Pastor David. Thank you. And welcome, folks, to the talk show, Let the Truth Be Told. I'm your host, Pastor David. And, folks, we got a conversation we got to have today. The Chicago Mayor, Brandon Johnson, has gotten in trouble. But first, let me give all praises to God and my Lord and Savior, Yahshua of Nazareth, who made it possible for me to be here and everybody else. Listen, to the people of Chicago and to the state of Illinois. Brandon Johnson has really lost his mind for the simple fact that the money that he stole, the lies that he has told is starting to catch up with him. He has also lost the trust of his own party. Now the Democrats are looking for ways to get rid of him. So what we're going to explore today, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that he has done and the problems that he has. But first, let me get my co-host in. Let me get Doc in. Hey, Doc.
Hey, how you doing?
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Listen, the mayor here in Chicago has lost confidence in everything he has done. He has got down with the migrants, and the migrants have cost us $400 million. I just did a little search on that.
Wow.
And that money could have been used for the citizens here in Chicago.
Correct.
But he continues to try to downplay it as if, he has done nothing wrong, and yet he's doing a good job, and he keep coming up with my crime is low, this and that and low. But the people of Chicago are facing high taxes. They're facing crimes that the migrants are doing. It's been a total loss for the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois with Brandon Johnson and J.B. Pritzker, who are destroying this state and destroying our city. Your thoughts on that, Doc?
Well, good morning. And again, thank you for having me on the show. And hey, everybody out there. Well, what's happening is it's become more about party and less about the constituents that put him in office, him and J.B. Pritzker. And this is something that I'm noticing. And it's not just the Democrats, it's the Republicans as well. Because, where are the Republicans to really speak up on behalf of the citizens of Chicago? I have yet to see any Republicans in Illinois speak really, truly out against Brandon Johnson. I mean, are they supporting him in the background? Where are they? I guess that's my question.
Well, the problem is that the Republican Party here in Chicago is null and void. Most of them are rhinos. They have not stepped up to the plate. These are Democrats posing as Republicans. And that's why we see the problems that we're seeing today, is because if the Republican Party was true to who they are, they would have intervened a long time ago and brought
Right.
federal help into this state and into
Mhm.
the city so that we could get some things done properly the right way.
Yeah.
But now that this thing has gotten so far out of hand, they are really trying to speak up now. But like I said, there's a lot of rhinos here, and they really don't have the citizens' best interests at hand. It's about power. These are Democrats posing as Republicans. And so this is the reason why we're in this situation. But Doc, I got a clip I want to play right quick. We can take a look at that.
All
City
right.
of Chicago already dealing with a massive budget gap this year of almost $1 billion. And now Mayor Brandon Johnson is warning the problem is not going away next year or even the year after.
And he's putting together a working group to investigate that ongoing crisis. NBC5's Christian Farr has reaction.
Mayor Brandon Johnson received a round of applause after signing an executive order that will launch a working group charged with investigating the city's ongoing budget issues. Besides this year's budget deficit, the mayor's office says the city is facing a projected gap of $1.12 billion next year and $1.32 billion in 2027.
Largely due to the rising personnel, pension, and contractual costs that we have. At the same time, we face unprecedented threats from the federal government.
Fiscal watchdog group called Center for Tax and Budget Accountability sees this as a solid move by the Johnson administration, stressing that the city's budget gap issues have been a problem that were created by.
Doc, I want to stop that right there for a second.
You're gonna wait a minute. You're bankrupting your city, and then you're gonna put a group in place to basically try to mitigate why you're failed as a mayor. Like the budget, that's your whole job, bro. Like
Well,
that is literally your job to
Well,
oversee that.
this is a pattern that the Democrats use to
Yeah.
create a committee to find out what's wrong.
It's diversion. It's a
We-
diversion tactic.
We
as far
already
as I'm
know
concerned.
what's wrong with the situation is the mayor is not capable of doing his job.
Wow.
You know, this committee, just like the reparations committee, folks, he
Right.
came out when the scores were so low, he started talking about reparations, and that's the
Right.
key word to try to get Black people back on board.
Mhm.
So now here we are. It's $1 billion gap.
Right.
See, to the citizens of Chicago and the state of Illinois, there was $1.7 billion that was returned of COVID money that disappeared that the state got. So now we're seeing the numbers fall into place that money is showing up as missing now, and it's being passed on to the taxpayers to try to cover it. This is another way Brandon Johnson and J.B. Pritzker have continued to try to cover themselves for the money they've taken, and they're trying to keep the money now that the federal government is saying, we want to take our money back. We want to stop things going on here in Illinois until we find out exactly what's going on. And that's what they did, because I saw Elon Musk did a Doge on this apartment complex on the west side because of the fifth development. And they're finding money missing. It's so much money that have been allocated to this thing. Brandon Johnson could be going to jail just for that itself.
Wow.
Your thoughts,
Okay.
Doc?
Well, it's a diversion tactic to put in place a committee. And to your point, this is a Democratic move and tactic. I mean, even Governor Newsom has done it within his state as governor. Everybody's like, okay, you need to do something different. And so they will put in place these task force or committees as if they're really going to do something and change something. No, they're not. They're just trying to cover their tracks. Okay. They're just trying to cover up the fact that they've done illegal activity, or they've completely, trounced their budget and not done their job as the officials they were supposed to for the people of the state or city that they represent. I remember when Brandon Johnson, was bidding for mayor of Chicago after Lightfoot. And he was saying, yeah, we're going to do things differently. So I can understand why people actually believed him that he was going to do better. And he's done far more worse than she could have ever done. But she set him up to
Yes, she
do
did.
what he's doing right now. And it's just really sad that both parties really don't have the constituents in mind with the way they're moving forward with their agenda.
Well, to the people of Chicago, this is another gaslighting situation
It is
that Brandon
completely.
Johnson is doing to try to throw off the real problem. And the
Mhm.
real problem is that he spent remember the $175 million that he was begging for the school
Right,
board?
right.
That money now has went up to $400 million. He is giving $400 million to illegal aliens here just to get them here to Chicago. The taxpayers' money is like, it's unfathomable. It's just crazy, the fact that what he has done. But
Mhm.
just like I said before, they all had an agenda.
Yeah.
See, Lori Lightfoot was to tear the city down, kill the school unions, do all the things that she did, and then transfer the baton over to Brandon by opening the door for the migrants. And it has been a downhill scenario for the people here in Chicago, because taxpayer dollars are feeding these guys, they're hiding these guys, they're teaching them how to avoid ICE. I mean, all of these things are coming back to bite him right now. And this
Mhm.
is the reason why he's trying to say, well, to the people of Chicago, crime is low. Crime is not low in Chicago. They don't want to give the real numbers. And so for him to do what he's doing right now is really a slap in the face to the people of Chicago, saying he
Mhm.
want to create a committee. Let's finish a little more of this.
One previous administration.
This is getting all the stakeholders at the table that really should be involved in trying to help inform the city resolve its long-term fiscal problems. You have the business community will be there, the labor community will be there.
The cuts are going to be deep. The impact on workers are going to be harsh.
Alderman Ray Lopez and other critics of the mayor say he should have put this working group together at the beginning of his administration. Alderman Lopez says the city has an ongoing spending problem right now that needs to be addressed in order to control the continuing deficit.
That's his own fiscal mismanagement on full display right now. And to say that you're going to bring some working group together when you've had aldermen try to tell you and sound the alarm for your entire tenure at this point only tells me that you're now just trying to cover your rear end, because you know that you cannot hide and lie any longer.
According to the executive order, this working group should have a preliminary report completed by the end of August this year, and a final comprehensive report is due by May 2026. In Streeterville, Christian Farr, NBC5 News.
Your thoughts, Doc?
Well, it was like I said, he's trying to cover his rear end.
Yes.
And those are facts. Those are
Yes.
just the facts. And it's really sad, because this is a pattern of behavior by the Democratic Party all over the country. This
Yes.
is what they do. And to your point, the rhinos are helping facilitate this,
Yes, they
because
are.
there's no one standing up on behalf of the constituents there to say, hey, this is wrong. We're in too deep over our heads and we need to stop this. They continue to put these committees in place to save their rear end.
Well, Doc, that's the reason why we do this show, so we can get
Yeah.
the real numbers. We can get truth to the American people, especially the
Yes.
people here in Chicago, about what's going on, because he has really, really put himself in a position to be impeached. And we have here in Chicago, I want to say this, it's every man for themselves, Doc.
And it's sad.
And now that they see Brandon Johnson in trouble, the Democratic Party has turned against him.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I also wanted to add, when you say he says that crime is lower, I need people to realize they're not counting the migrants within those numbers, because they're not citizens. They're
Yes.
only counting crimes that happen with citizens, because they're not even considering, in the most part, these people residents. And somebody else brought up a really good point. There's going to be another census possibly done. And I want to say that was Marjorie Taylor Greene. And she was talking about how, Democrats will try to gerrymander and redistrict based on the numbers that they have to get more representation in the House. And if they do that, it's going to gain them 20 more seats in the areas where they have these illegal migrants. Because see, the census doesn't necessarily count citizens, it counts residency. And that's where we really have to go, okay, no, you cannot be counted in the census if you are a resident because you may not be here legally. So therefore you can't be counted. But this is what the Democratic Party is trying to do.
Well, they use the play on words. You know what I'm saying? They're saying,
Absolutely.
well, you know what? These are not citizens, but they're residents.
Residents.
See, that's the big difference. And that's how they're trying to justify this is a resident of the state of Illinois. Even though they're illegal, they are not even residents of the state, but they are illegal. And this is what's happening to here in Chicago. And I just think that if the citizens have woke up. We see people like Danielle Carter, myself, and those who are watching this thing closely saying to the citizen of Chicago, it's time for a change. It's time for us to get away from under the thumb of Brandon Johnson. And that's the reason why I'm running for mayor of 2027. So we can bring back some honesty and integrity to that office. You know, there's so many things that he has done illegally that he continued to do that the people of Chicago are not aware of, but it's all coming out. And now check this out, Doc. Remember when the illegals got to Chicago, all the aldermen was in cahoots with Brandon Johnson.
Yes, they were.
Yes, and they were trying to find ways to continue to support the money, bring the money in so that they could help the migrants. Now, all of a sudden, all these aldermen are up for re-election. And they know what they have done to the citizens of Chicago.
Exactly.
So now the people here in Chicago are seeing the aldermen saying, hey, guess what? We're on your side. So what we need to do and what I plan to do here is we need to run a ticket. All of those aldermen who have been with the mayor all this time, the lying, the cheating, the stealing, now they're turning against Brandon Johnson because they know they want to be reelected. Your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, you just have to point these people out. And to your point, run as a ticket and find people who have trust in the community, not to do wrong by the people, but to do right by the citizens of Chicago. Because see, Cook County, look, they made a whole musical about it called Chicago on purpose. I mean, they Murderous Row. Like there's so many songs. And I know that they weren't trying to make fun of Chicago, but they pointed out the criminal activity way back then. This has been going on for well over a century within Chicago. And it's so sad that criminal behavior has gotten such a foothold into one county in particular within all the United States that's known for criminal activity. It's time for a change. And it's time for a rebranding of Chicago, right? To be on the other side of the criminal behavior. That's all I'm saying. It's time for a change.
Well, Doc, listen, we going to revisit Brandon Johnson, but now to the American people and patriots across this country, let's switch gears.
All right.
Now, the Democrats was crying about China. They was crying about the Ukraine. They said the tariffs will never work, that we would be in hot Kemp, whatever. And it has not happened. President Trump has already made a deal with the Ukraine that's going to be successful. They bring economic backs to the United States. The Democrats said that will never happen. The tariffs are going to destroy us.
Yes.
He also did a big trade deal with China. Now, when he came against China, they were saying, well, this is the end of Trump. Trump has done this, China this. China buckled.
Yes, they did.
Those high tariffs cost them because it's just simple. See, China doesn't allow American goods to be sold in China.
That's right.
But everything that China sells in America makes trillions and trillions of dollars off of it. And under Joe Biden, China did whatever they wanted to do because they knew Joe was not strong enough to stand or do any dealing because the American people was not behind him. But now that Trump had stepped into the middle of this thing, he's got the deal with China. He has done the deal with the Ukraine, and he also did a deal with the Saudi Arabia. Now, those are wins.
Yeah, they are.
And the fact of the matter is that one of the Saudi states wanted to give the United States a jet. Now, we want to hit that right quick. a
Okay.
plane and so forth.
Qatar.
And that, yeah, in Qatar. But the sad thing of it is the Democrats are kicking against it, saying, well, you know, you can't do this, you can't do that. If it's a gift, and all of them can receive gifts, just like Brandon Johnson receiving gifts from different companies and different, you know, things that were sent to him. So this is the big kick now. They're saying he shouldn't have accepted, he shouldn't do this. But why not? Why shouldn't we accept this jet?
Well, this isn't the first time that Qatar has given gifts to the United States. But, you know, when you're given a gift like this, there's always that question of, is this a quid pro quo situation? What do you want, Qatar? You know, but here's the thing. They're not giving it to President Trump individually. It's actually a gift to the government.
Yes.
It went through the process of the DOD. So it went through the Department of Defense saying, hey, we want to give this to you as a gift. And me, you know, I'm a paralegal. I work for a high-end company, and we could only get something worth $25. And
Right.
it was always, who's giving you the gift? Why are they giving you the gift? What is their intention behind it? And will later on, they'll say, okay, we gave you this, we need this in return. And I think that's the lingering question for those asking, why would they just all of a sudden give a $400 million gift? Now, if this was like the last 6 months in 2028, I really wouldn't raise an eyebrow. I'd be like, okay, cool. It's on its way out. It's going to go to the presidential library, whatever. This is at the beginning of his second term. And I'm like, okay, what you want? what you want, bro? $400 million? You want something? You're not saying it right now, but I've never known Qatar to really ask for anything. Now, they do work with the United States. I have a cousin. She actually, you know, got a job over in Qatar, and she was there for a little over a year, and it was great. She really enjoyed it. But it's looking at, okay, is anything in the relationship going to change because of this plane? I think that's the bigger question.
Well, the Democrats have no right to say nothing. They need to just sit down and shut up from this point, because everything that they've said about President Trump is dealing with the economy, the tariffs, have just fallen back into their face. And the real things we need to be talking about is some arrest warrants for all those who did what they did and committed treason to this country under the Democratic Party. Now, to the American people and patriots across this country, I want to play a clip, because we went from 16% inflation under the Biden administration, and in the month of April, it went down to 2.3%. Let's play this clip right quick.
Nice.
Soaring today in the wake of that U.S.-China trade truce. For more on the rally and what it does mean for investors moving forward, let's welcome in now Christian Chan, Asset Mark Chief Investment Officer. Christian, great to see you on set.
Thanks for having me.
So the U.S.-China trade truce, we'll call it, Christian. I mean, the market's clearly very happy about it. Are you as excited about what you're reading today, the headlines, the reports, Christian?
You know, I am cautiously optimistic on what this means. And in my view, what this really means for markets is that the worst case scenario is largely taken off the table. And when I think about market expectations, I really do think about the probability weighted view of what might happen. And if that worst case is off the table, then I think there's really good reason to rally.
But rally from here, I mean, as I was talking about earlier, if you look at the year to date now for the S&P 500, we're not much change. We're down like less than 1%. So yes, the worst case scenario is off the table. But if you look at where we were January 1st, there are now 30% tariffs on China. There are 10% tariffs on everywhere else in the world. So does a 1% decline in the S&P 500 year to date price that in?
You know, I think it actually prices in a potential range of outcomes. And when I kind of think about what happened over the weekend, again, that worst case is off the table. And as long as companies can adjust their supply chains over time, I think they'll continue to be able to grow earnings. And that, I think, provides a little bit of an off-ramp, if you will, for the equity markets in order to continue to grind higher. So,
Doug, let's stop that right there for a second. Now, to the American people and patriots across this country, remember when President Trump said he was going to implement these tariffs? The stock fell crazily.
Right.
The American people were sort of shaky, and the Democrats was running around hollering, I told you so. I told you so. Now look at the economy. The economy is on the upswing.
Yes.
We're back in control of our foreign relations with different countries
Yes.
all over this world.
Mm-hmm.
American companies are coming back to the United States so that they can enjoy the fact that our economy is doing good. I mean, here we are looking at a 2.3 inflation, down from 16% under the Democratic leadership. Your thoughts, Doc?
Yeah, you know, and President Trump stated in the beginning, he's like, look, it's going to be a little bumpy. It's going to be a little rough, but we're going to make it through. Just hold on with me, right? So he prefaced it with, okay, the markets may go down, but you'll be fine. Now, to anybody who bought when the markets were down, good on you. Because you got a nice little bump there. You buy low and you sell high or hold, right? And so, you know, I would like to see how many Democrats and Republicans, you know, what were their trades going? I'm going to actually find that website because there actually is a website that follows their trades in real time. And I want to see how many of them, while they were yelling and screaming, oh, he's going to destroy the markets, were buying and selling at that time. Because it will be very telling of each of them, how they were moving in the background, you know, during that time.
Right.
And how the markets were going. They're so disingenuous, you know, unfortunately, the individuals in our Congress, and also saying, you know, this is what the worst 100 days. Maybe it was the worst 100 days for your party, because it was very telling of how you could have closed the borders, you didn't. How you don't want to take men out of women's sports when you have the opportunity. You know,
that was their job. Their job was to create this whole facade as if, you know, our world needed to be changed.
Right.
They wanted to change the identity of our children. They wanted to change the identity of the American people. And yet that was a failed attempt. But as long as they were in power, they were force feeding it. They was pushing it down everybody's throat, and they was complaining. I'm so sick of them. Everything that happens, they bring President Trump. It's like Trump this. They are not talking. The Democratic Party is not talking about any ways to make America great. They're talking about ways on how they can hate Trump. And that has been their message to the American people. We just hate Trump. We don't care how well he does. We don't care if he turned this whole country around. We don't care about that. We just want the American people to hate him. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's all they have, right? And, you know, I saw a video earlier this week with David Hogg, and he, you know, he's now leading the Democratic Party within their convention. I was like, you know what? And I said, you know, if there's anything that the Democratic Party can do right now, is they really need to go grassroots and talk to the constituents and find out what they really need. Because right now they're at a level where they're truly elitist, and they're like, we'll tell you what you need. They're not asking what people need and what people want. And that's really where they need to turn the corner. But hey, don't listen to me. It's cool. Don't. Because you're going to find yourself out of a job in 2026. And that's for the Republicans as well. You know, Redemption Party, we're here. Check us out. Just saying.
Listen, to the American people and patriots across this country, now that we can see, even to the Democratic citizens in this country, you can see the change at the grocery store. Prices are down. Gas prices are down. Oil prices are down. Everything that Trump said he was going to do, he has done it. 99% closure of the borders. There's no more crossing like it was a million. We got over 20-some million illegals in this country. And it was all done by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the borders are, when she opened up the borders and let them in here. And now we can see the reprise of our country with President Trump making a deal with the Arabs. Now our economy is starting to go up instead of go down. So I want to play a clip about the Consumer Price Index. Let's check this out, Doc.
One of the most important metrics at this point in time, up 0.2 on headline, and that is a tenth lighter than expected. And do remember, in the rearview mirror, at least up to now unrevised, that -0.1 was a 5-year low. Let's strip out food and energy. Up 0.2, also 1/10 light to expectations, and it follows up 1/10, which was a 4-year low. Let's take a broader view. Move year over year on headline 2.3. Yes, you guessed it. 1/10 lighter than expectations, 1/10 lighter than the rear view mirror, and it also now represents a fresh 4-year low because it's lower than our last look, sequentially lower. And finally, year over year, X food and energy, known as core, comes in at 2.8. That equals expectations, equals our last look, and equals the fact that it's a 4-year low. Now, I like doing the indices. This is a CPI index. It goes all the way back to 1913. Comes in at 320.795, a new all-time high. Pretty much happens every month. The index itself makes new highs. And if we look at core, which started in 1957, it comes in at 326.43, and you guessed it, another all-time forever high. We see that yields are moving down a bit because we have made progress. What the irony here is the rearview mirror, those rates were so much smaller 4 to 5 years in those interim periods at a time where the renewed Fed look on inflation due to potentially tariffs. We went a year and a half, Joe, where we really made no progress, but yet the Fed seemed to pretend we did. Now we're making real progress, and all anyone could talk about is inflation, inflation, inflation. Back to you.
Your thoughts, Don?
That's very telling.
Yes.
It's extremely telling of just how biased the feds are, right?
Yes.
And depending on who's in the seat, we'll just say that, they move in a certain way. And I think that's why a lot of people want the Federal Reserve abolished, because they don't help America. They really, truly don't.
Right.
They hurt America. They help America when it's beneficial for
Yes.
them, right? But not when it's beneficial for the constituents of this country. And that is something, it just depends on who's in the seat at the Federal Reserve, right?
Yes. And
Is what it is.
to tell the truth, the Federal Reserve is not a government agency.
It is not. It is not.
not.
Even though they've given them complete autonomy over our economy. What was that about? But another story.
People don't really realize that it is a private organization of bankers.
Yeah.
And so the deceiving, the continuation of saying things what they are and they're not. So the point of it is President Trump is making leaps and bounds to regain our country control, to get our economy back to a place where we don't have to continue to worry about what it's going to cost. What did Barack Obama say about eggs are at an all-time high? Well, Barack, look at our country now being brought back to the way it used to be under the first Trump administration. And to the American people and patriots across this country, this is what we asked for. Wow. This is what the American people went to the polls and voted overwhelmingly to put Trump back in the office, to get our economy back on track. And he is definitely doing that. And we should be happy that he is. And this is a real axe to the neck of the Democratic Party, because no American citizen who can see what's happening in our country right now, the upswing that we're getting, we should never want to go back down that Democratic road, because we know what they're going to bring. They're going to bring wars. They're going to bring inflation. They're going to do the continuation to destroy our schools with our kids and our future. The Democratic Party has fell flat on its face, and the American people can see exactly who they are and what their plans for with the New World Order, and they should never be back in office. I would say, presumably, they need to be disbanded, because none of them have ever talked about our economy. All they talked about was the transgenders, the he, she's, the pronoun, the men in the bathroom. That's all that they ran on, while they continue to transfer wealth, not to the American people, but from the American people to themselves. Doc?
Yeah, I'm going to cover this a little bit in my show tomorrow morning on Unfiltered Vision. But Jasmine Crockett, she was saying, who's responsible for the economy? Not the transgenders. Who's responsible for this? Not the transgenders. It's like, you're right. They're not responsible for it. But you as a party need to be held responsible, because those are the people that you propped up.
Yeah, yeah,
Do you know
and
what I'm
now,
saying? Over the
yes.
American people. Let's talk about
Well,
that.
well, that was one of the hidden agendas that really, took us by storm, was the
Yes.
fact that once they destroyed the economy, then it all started to come out. This was all about forcing us to accept an abomination lifestyle to be normal. Now,
Yeah.
I don't have anything against gays or anything, but
Huh.
the truth of the matter is this: this should have never happened. The
Mhm.
Democratic Party should have been doing what Donald Trump is doing, creating relationships, creating economic development with other countries. They
Yeah.
didn't do that. It was all
Yeah.
about the social stuff that they wanted to push on us.
Yeah.
They did it. And to the American people and patriots across this country, take a look at what has happened in the first 100 and something days under President Trump compared to the last 4 years of what we saw. I don't think anybody in their right mind as a citizens in this country would want to go back to that. Your thoughts, Doc?
No, absolutely not. I'm not looking forward to June, but what I will do and say is I encourage everyone in your state to protest June. And the
Yes.
reason why is because we have decency laws in each state and in each city, each town across this country, that no persons under the age of 16 should have any illicit material presented to them by anyone, right? I wouldn't say their parents. I mean, if their parents, share that with them, that's their parents. But I'm saying outside of their parents, or in the schools, in the streets. Last year in New York, they had grown men, walking around with nothing but a sock on.
Yes.
Okay. This happened. And they're
It did.
talking about, this is private. No, this is degenerate activity is what it
Yes,
is.
it is.
You just want to be naked in the streets. And the next thing we're going to see is people having sex in the streets, because that's where we're headed with this. This is not about anything else but degenerate behavior. And if you
Yes.
see any children, or if they're promoting this to children in June, I encourage everyone, you call your mayors, your governors, and even your federal Senate and members, House and Senate, even in the state, and you petition, you complain, and you say, we do not want this here in our state.
Yes.
It should be disbanded. Just the way Biden approved it, I encourage the Trump administration to reverse that and ban it all over this country, because I don't want to see that. If you want to do that with the adults outside of the purview of people who don't want to see it, that's your business. I don't want to see it on TV. I don't want to see any parades. I don't want to see you doing this in front of children. And that's all I got to say on that one.
Well, Doc, listen to this. President Trump signed an executive order that are allowing teachers to enforce discipline in the classroom again.
Yes.
And I think that it should be. I see things on the internet where kids are fighting teachers, punching teachers in the face if they don't call them the pronoun that they want. Our schools have really lost any learning ability because the children aren't learning anything. They're learning how to fight. They're learning how to be transgenders. They're learning how to be disrespectful to the teachers. That's why they're not learning anything, and they're graduating a bunch of dummies. So I would say discipline in the schools, it should be. Because when I was in school, that was discipline.
Yes.
There was a choice. If you acted up at school, you had a choice. You could either go down to the disciplinary Mr. Tenny Breeny office and take your few squats on the butt, and then it didn't go to your parents where you was going to get a real beat down then. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So this is in alignment with what giving parents back their power. To be able to discipline children in school is needed, because look at us. I got disciplined in school, and I graduated from high school at 15. So I learned something. I learned structure. I learned respect. Those are the things that we have to get back to teaching our children so that they can be somebody that can be fruitful in this country. Because right now, our children don't know anything. They can't count. They can't read. They're so disrespectful. That's why you see the teen takeovers here in Chicago with Black Lives Matter teaching them. All of these things need to be removed. Your thoughts, Doc?
Yeah. And a lot of times when people hear discipline, they think corporal punishment. Discipline does not necessarily mean corporal punishment, but it does mean, yeah, there are going to be disciplinary tactics taken. When I was growing up, we had something called secondary school. And that's where all of the children who wouldn't listen to the teachers in our school went. And they went to a school where, they were handled in a different way. And I just remember some of those individuals, they still graduated on time.
Yes.
Right. And they actually had a lot more respect for the lives that they had and how they affected the community with their actions. They really were taught discipline in a way that they needed. We do have military schools. We do have, things in place for children that, maybe primary, the schools that they're going to, it might not be for them, but the children there that want to be there shouldn't have to suffer and be disregarded because of the children that need more attention and are acting out because they're not getting that attention at home, or whatever's going on with them mentally. They need a little bit more care in different areas, and we need to put people in place that are not going to encourage behavior that is not suited to them, which means, i.e., stop trying to turn every child into a transgender just because they can't sit still in class.
Well, you know what? In our time, and I saw this coming, when there was children who were overly active.
Yes, overly stimulated.
Right. I had a nephew, Tavian Banks. When he was a kid, he was just always running around. And when he got in school, they was trying to say they wanted to put him on a Ritalin drug because he was excitable, And I told Tavian's mother, I said, don't do that. Don't let the school put your child on medicines because it will make them dorsal where they don't have no thoughts, they have nothing. Well, the moral to the story is my nephew Tavian Banks went on to the Iowa University, became the #1 running back in the country.
Wow.
Was picked in the draft by the Jacksonville Jaguars, and now he's retired. And so had they put him on those drugs like the schools was doing back then, he probably would have never achieved all those goals. So I'm looking forward to a structure of disciplinary things that could be done in our schools to get our children back under control, because right now they've totally gone awry. They're disrespectful. They have no ideas. They have no future. Most of them is not going to go to college because they're not going to be able to pass any entrance exams. They're not going to be able to do that because they're not educated enough. And it's so sad, Doc. I saw a show yesterday talking about lowering the standard of grading in the schools, so that if you got a child that's getting flunking out of school, they don't want that anymore. They don't want a grading tier. They want to just say every child should be given an opportunity, no matter how bad he is. We don't want to tell them that they're bad so that they won't get worse. Your thoughts on that?
This is where sixth place ribbons came into place. And here we are. Okay. Because there's no sixth place ribbons. You're first. I'm going to go to Ricky Bobby on this one. You're either first or you're last. And that's it.
Exactly.
There's only 3 places, first, second, and third. And after that, you're not on the podium for a reason, so that you want to try harder to get first, second, or third. Okay. I understand that we do want children to feel accomplished, but by lowering the standards, we're not helping them.
No,
we are truly not helping them. Like I was saying, earlier, there's secondary school for a reason, because some of these children needed the extra attention where they weren't getting it. And in the case of your nephew, I don't think a lot of people understand what Ritalin is. It's cocaine and heroin.
Yes, it is. It is.
That's what it is in a pill. And we're giving this to children. That's why you have to have a prescription for it. Okay.
Yes.
And we're giving this to children. We're literally giving our children narcotics.
Yes.
Okay. And no,
it's destroying them psychologically. That's what it's
really
doing.
And a lot of what's happening is in the gut and in our diet. And we're not looking at that. What are we feeding our children? Well, we're pumping them with a lot of sugar that we're finding out from HHS, from RFK, and the dyes that are affecting them. those are the things we need to look at. Why is this children here? What's their diet? Let's check out that first. Okay.
Yes.
So this affects them after they eat. They're kind of bouncing off the walls. Well, maybe they shouldn't eat that. Okay, let's let mom and dad know, like, hey, we see that your child, they're affected by this. What are they eating at home? And really start to have that parent, child, teacher relationship. And that's how it should be. We're supposed to have a relationship with the educators that we send our children to, or, the children that are homeschooled. Why do they do so much better? Because somebody actually cares.
Exactly. And
That's
they're
all it
actually
is.
learning, and they're actually teaching them. What? I listen to the radio, and on the radio, rappers say curse words, right? Why are we still beeping out curse words, but you're teaching children to have sex change operations? You're showing
And
them
all
that
other kind of stuff.
Right. You can be naked and put a sock on your penis and walk around like that's covering yourself, and let our children see that. The radio industry needs to stop that. If it's a curse word, let it go, because if you're letting all this other stuff go and our children are seeing it, what good does it do for a curse word to come up and the stations bleep it out like bleep, bleep, bleep?
Well, there's really only 3 words left on the list, and it's down from like over 3,000 words that you couldn't say. Okay, from 3,000 to about 3. It might be at 2 at this point. But I know there's 3. There's M, F, F, and SB. I'm just telling you. Those are the only 3 that you won't hear on the radio. You're going to hear everything
else. Exactly.
Everything else. And you know what? And you're right. And that's because we have no more shame. Right. There's no more shame in this country. People do not feel ashamed when their 3-year-old is saying these lyrics in the grocery store. There's no more shame. You see kids twerking on videos all over the internet. And, that comes back to parenting. That comes back to being, wholesome. Like, when did we lose this? Because we allowed Satan to start running our schools.
Yes.
And our teachers and our parents. And a lot of people are going to say, well, this isn't about Satan. Yes, it is. This is a spiritual warfare. We are spiritual beings, period.
Yes, we
are. And we dropped our guard, trying to be nice.
Yes.
Trying to say, well, this is okay. Well, Jesus said a little bit of yeast.
Yes.
That's all it takes.
That's
and
all it
here
takes.
We are.
Now, Doc, you got some stuff that you want to discuss today. Let's get to your agenda. Go ahead. Tell our listeners what you're going to do.
Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about, and I won't go deep into it, remember when Donald Trump actually made the cartels and the different gangs terrorist organizations.
Yes.
Okay. He dubbed them terrorist organizations. Well, come to find out that these terrorist organizations were working with American companies. So these,
Wait a minute. How is it that an American company could actually work with a cartel? For what? That they're totally illegal. They're selling fentanyl. They're doing all these things. Explain that, Doc.
Yes. So the American companies that were located like maybe in Mexico or some of the border states, they were working with the cartels to pay the cartels off so they could do business and have passage. Now, you would say, like, why would you be like the mob paying off these cartels so you can do business? Because that's how business is done in some of these countries. That's what's going down. But, I don't have the article here in front of me, but the article basically stated that you have U.S. companies that were kind of upset with Donald Trump dubbing the cartel a terrorist organization, because it was like, well, you're making us look like we're working with a terrorist organization. Well, you are. And you have been for a long time. They just weren't classified as such. Yeah, you're going to have to stop working with the cartel. But then where does that leave you? And that was the bigger question in the article. It's like, oh my gosh, he's done this and it's left us wide open. It's like, wait a minute. Am I living in upside down land? Excuse me? Are you really telling me you were working with the cartel doing business? Like, you're admitting to criminal activity and making it seem like it's Donald Trump's fault that he's called them out. Very unusual behavior that we have.
Yep. And, the companies that are doing this should be held accountable because for the simple fact is this, President Trump has stepped in to the drug arena, to the pharmacies. He's lowering all sorts of medical costs for our citizens and our seniors. He's revamping things that have been in place. You know, the fact that they were using metformin for diabetes and all the insulin and all the prices were sky high. It was him who implemented that $35 piece that you couldn't go higher, because I'm a Medicare advisor. That happened under his first administration. Then Joe and them came up with the Inflation Act, and they've changed everything. They made seniors think that Trump didn't know what he was doing, but what Trump did was he rolled back all the stuff that the Democrats did, so the seniors can now get raises. They can get their medicines. Why in other countries that medicines are so low, and here in the United States they're sky high, and most seniors are on fixed incomes and they can't pay for it?
Yeah, and I love what he did, because to your point, he's evening the playing field, but now Democrats are mad. I'm like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. He started it. You guys actually put it in the Inflation Reduction Act and lauded it and said, hey, look at what we're doing. But see, he's taking it one step further. He's saying we're going to pay what everybody else is paying. So if somebody's paying $2 for ivermectin, guess what? It's going to cost us $202 here, as opposed to $200 here, the way it is now. That's all he's doing. He's not saying we're going to just get insulin to $35, because that's all they kept touting, right? They only talked about insulin. They never talked about anything else. You know,
medicines,
because one of his, as he said, fat friends was using the fat drug, and they were paying
Ozempic.
Right. And his friend was saying, I was paying $1,300 in America, but I'm here in another country and it's only costing me, it's less than $60 here. Why? What's the issue? And so that's what he's doing. It's on everything, not just on a certain in particular prescription.
Well, it's good that we got RFK in the position with the health that he is in, because Ozempic was a diabetes medicine.
Yes.
So how do you change from a diabetes medicine to a weight loss medicine?
It was one of the side effects, but I would warn people, definitely check with your doctor, because it can cause thyroid cancer. That's one of the downsides. It can cause different heart issues if you have heart disease. And it also, the reason why you're losing so much weight is because it's eating away at your muscle. And so, it does. It eats away at your muscle. So if you were going to do something like this, I would implore people to get with the doctor, make sure you're using it maybe as a kickstart if you have a certain amount of weight and goal that you need to lose. And then from there, get into your healthy eating and exercise so that you can maintain the weight loss and not rely on it as weight loss. Because once you stop taking it, it's like everything else, you're going to gain it back.
I had a friend of mine that was using the Ozempic for weight loss, and he lost quite a bit of weight. I mean, he had a bulging belly. He lost all of that. But then it was destroying his system. And then he had to get off of it. Now he's gained the weight back more than what he had before.
Just saying. I'm just saying. With anything, especially with weight loss, because we do have an obesity problem here in the United States, and it's because of our diet. We have a SAD diet, the standard American diet, and everybody has to eat differently. I really appreciate RFK pointing out the seed oils and pointing out things that people can make small changes in the way they're eating now to just tweak it so you're eating better. No, you can't have pizza every day, but you can have it twice a month. You can't have certain things every day, but you can have them here and there. And it's balancing that out. And really, there are a lot of chemicals in the stuff that we eat.
Yes.
So I'm really appreciating how he's really cracking down on the FDA and saying, hey, there's certain things that we shouldn't be putting in our food supply that are banned in other countries. And we should really get to, go back to eating in a better way and just being healthy.
Well, the older you get, the slower your metabolism comes. You don't work out as much as you should. And weight seems to pile on, the way I do it, man, I quit eating fried foods. I quit eating, I stopped a long time eating pork. Anything that was not good for me, I quit eating. And here at 68, I get up, I still do the same thing. I'm in the gym, bench pressing 260, hitting the bag, I'm running, I'm jumping rope. And I mean, my body is conformed to my workout now. It doesn't matter how old you get. Once your body is conditioned for a certain thing, then it will do it no matter what age you are until you just can't do it anymore. But
Right.
I think what RFK is doing is changing the way we eat, changing the way we think. And this is going to be good for the American citizens, especially our seniors. Doc?
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. You have to do it. Now, I'm a little bit less physical, as they say, because I have rods in my back. I have scoliosis, but I still have to make sure that I'm eating right, that, I am, doing the exercises that I can do. I have to have a little bit more safety again, because I have to protect my back, especially at my age of being 53. So, again, you have to have that self-care and take care of your human. You really, really do.
Well, Doc, we're getting close to that old time on the wall.
Okay.
And I appreciate you coming. Talk a little bit more about your show, because we have launched, folks. You can go to our Roku channel.
Yes.
You can go to your home engine on your Roku, put in search and put in Let the Truth Be Told Networks, and you can find our channel right there, Doc. Go ahead.
Yes. As the pastor was saying, I actually host Unfiltered Vision News on that Roku channel that we have, Let the Truth Be Told, and all of our different sub channels are there. We've got the PB&J Hour.
Yes.
And we also have Emerging Beyond with Dr. Spear. And I want to say we've got Raymond. It's a
Raham.
the Raham show. So we're just, we're adding different shows to the network. We're really, really excited. And we really just want to bring you guys the best content and information out there, because there's a lot of voices out there, but we're really sticking to the Smith Month Act, and we're making sure that we're not propagandizing you guys, but we're actually giving you the information the best we can as we can get it, so you can be informed. And definitely check out Unfiltered Vision from 7 to 9 a.m. on the network. And I also go live every morning on X and on YouTube and Facebook.
Doc, thank you so much. And we look forward to channel be launching full force after a while. If you have sponsors who want to advertise on our network, you can always reach us. Call me at the number running across the screen, 708-663-5262. We'll be glad to have you part of our network. God bless you, Doc, and we'll talk soon.
Okay.
Folks, I want to thank you for tuning in to the show. These are my last words. To the American people and patriots across this country, we must continue to give time for President Trump to do his business, to be the president of this country, so that we can get back on track. We can see that the Democrats was wrong, that the tariffs worked. We got to deal with the UK. We got to deal with China. Our economy is down from 16% inflation to 2.3 this month. We got a dib on the table with the Syrians. This whole thing that President Trump is doing, he's doing it to make our country great again. So let us support him. Let us continue to stand up for righteousness, so that we ourselves, we the people here in the United States, can get back on track and get our country back flowing again and respected across the world. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.